Hey guys, tonight you find yourself lying on a narrow bed of damp straw in the chill shadow of a walled town, with cold stone close at your back, smoke caught in the rafters above you, and the sour-sweet smell of wet wool, horse breath, old ashes, and yesterday's ale tucked into every fold of the air. Somewhere beyond the timber wall of the workshed, a bell begins to sound before dawn, slow and hollow, as if the town itself is being gently reminded that sleep is a luxury and mud is the true lord of the road. Your boots wait beside you like two small defeated animals, still crusted from yesterday's track, and when you slide your feet into them, the leather gives a cold little sigh. Medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience. The drawings always show noble riders and shining banners, never the part where you wake up with straw in your sleeve and a suspicious ache in both knees. You probably would not last a week out here, and honestly, no one would blame you. The work is heavy, the mornings are dark, and breakfast is mostly coarse bread that seems to have been baked with a firm belief that teeth are temporary. Still, there is a strange comfort in the nearness of everything, the sleeping shapes of other workers under wool blankets, the dull glow of a half-burned candle, the soft creak of an oak door, the faint clatter of someone finding an iron key by touch. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while the first bell fades into the mist, you can leave a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is there. Whether your room is bright with morning, dark with midnight, or somewhere in between, like this town caught between sleep and labour. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You push yourself upright as the shed begins to stir. A man beside you coughs into his sleeve and mutters something about St. Christopher watching over travellers, but apparently not road builders, which seems unfair, given that without roads the travellers would mostly be standing in ditches looking spiritual. Another worker, old enough that his beard has gone the colour of hearth ash, ties a strip of linen around one wrist and says some swear it keeps the damp from settling in the bones. No one can quite agree whether it helps, but everyone agrees that cold wrists feel like punishment from a very minor saint. Outside, the world is still blue with early frost. The walled town rises behind you, its gate shut for the moment, its towers blunt and dark against the paling sky. The ditch below the wall holds a skin of grey water, and a thin mist creeps over it like wool pulled from a distaff. You step into the yard, where carts wait with their shafts tilted upward, and oxen stand breathing clouds into the air, patient as carved beasts. Their hides steam faintly, their bells make small, sleepy notes whenever they shift their weight. The road, if it deserves so grand a name, lies beyond the yard in a long brown wound of mud, ruts, puddles, and half-swallowed stones. It leads away from the town gate toward fields, forest, and the distant ridge where a monastery bell answers the town's bell in a softer voice. You can see where wheels have bitten deep into the track, where hooves have churned the clay, where last week's rain has made small, treacherous pools that reflect the sky with more beauty than usefulness. Somewhere under all the wet misery, the master says a better road is waiting. You're not sure roads wait for anything. They seem more like things people beg from the earth with shovels. The road crew gathers slowly. There are men in patched tunics, boys carrying baskets, two women with wrapped heads and strong hands who sort tools by touch and temper, and a broad-shouldered fellow named Hob who has already begun complaining, which is how everyone knows he is awake. The master of the works arrives last from the direction of the gatehouse, his cloak fur-lined but muddy at the hem, his measuring rod tucked beneath one arm. He has the solemn expression of a man entrusted with both public improvement and impossible expectations. He looks at the road. The road looks back in its muddy way and appears unimpressed. You follow the others as they take up spades, mattocks, wicker baskets, wooden mallets, and iron-shod picks. The handles are cold enough to bite the palm. A young worker blows on his fingers and tells you that if you rub them with goose grease before dawn, frost cannot catch them. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether goose grease protects the hands or simply makes every tool harder to hold. But the belief has survived. Perhaps because geese are difficult creatures and people assume they must possess hidden powers. Near the gate, a baker's boy passes with the tray covered in cloth, and the smell of warm bread briefly moves through the yard like a blessing. For one tender moment, everyone watches him. Even the oxen seem interested. Then he disappears through a side door, and the road remains. The master lifts his rod and begins calling names. You answer when yours is spoken, though your voice comes out rough from sleep. You are assigned the first stretch beyond the town, where the track dips toward the low fields. The old men say that dip has always been bad. In summer it bakes into ridges hard as bone. In autumn it turns to paste. In winter it freezes in shapes designed by someone with a personal grudge against ankles. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the road has been neglected because it is cursed, or cursed because everyone keeps neglecting it. The gate opens with a groan, iron hinges protesting into the morning. Beyond it, the outer road smells of clay, dung, crushed rushes, and cold water. A farmer waits with a cart of turnips, his horse flicking its ears. A pilgrim with a small badge sewn to his cloak stands aside, rubbing his hands beneath his sleeves. The badge catches a pale bit of light, a little stamped sign of some saint's shrine, bent at the edge from long travel. He watches the road crew with sympathy, which is kind, though not nearly as useful as helping. You trudge out through the gate with the others. Mud grips your boots immediately, as if it has missed you. Behind you, the town begins its own slow-waking shutters open. A cock crows from somewhere inside the wall. A woman calls for a child, and a dog barks as though deeply offended by mourning. Ahead, the road runs toward a row of bare trees, their branches black and delicate against the dawn. Frost silvering the weeds along the ditch begins to soften where the light touches it. The first task is simple, which in road work means exhausting. You and the others clear the worst of the loose muck from the sunken stretch, scraping and lifting, tossing sludge aside with wet sounds that are far too expressive for this hour. Your shoulders warm before your fingers do. The rhythm settles in, bite the spade. Lean your weight, lift, turn, drop. Somewhere nearby, Hobbs says he has known soups thicker than this road, though he admits most of them were served by his aunt. As you work, the master walks the edge of the track, studying the slope. He mutters about drainage, gravel, crown, and camber, words that sound almost scholarly until a wheel rut sucks at his boot and nearly takes it. A ripple of amusement passes through the crew, soft and careful, because laughing too loudly at the master is a privilege reserved for men who do not need wages. The sun lifts a little higher, turning the mist gold around the fields. Smoke rises from cottage roofs beyond the town ditch. A woman leads a cow along a narrow path, and the cow pauses to stare at you with the grave judgment of an abbess. Your breath steadies. The cold loosens its grip. The road begins, very slightly, to change under your hands. Not much, not enough for praise, but enough that water starts to move where before it sat stubborn and shining. A shallow channel appears along one side. Stones emerge from beneath the mud. old and rounded, perhaps placed years ago by workers whose names no one remembers. Some swear a few of these stones are Roman, though no one can quite agree how to tell a Roman stone from any other stone, except by giving it more dignity in conversation. By mid-morning, your tunic clings at the back, your palms sting, and the town behind you no longer seems like a place of hardship but like a paradise of walls, hearths, and people who are not currently arguing with clay. A bell rings again from within, marking an hour that belongs to monks, merchants, and anyone fortunate enough to measure time by prayer instead of shovelfuls. You pause with the others near the roadside ditch, sharing a heel of coarse bread and a small wooden cup of thin ale. The bread is dark, gritty, and stubborn, but it fills the mouth and steadies the body. The ale is safer than much water, and warmer in spirit than in fact. A stray dog appears from nowhere, narrow-ribbed and brown, sitting just beyond reach with the confidence of a creature who has studied human weakness for generations. You tear off a crumb and toss it. The dog catches it, then looks at you as if this arrangement has always been understood. Beyond the muddy stretch, the road bends toward the distant quarry road, toward carts and oxen, toward more stone than any back should reasonably lift. But for now, you stand in the pale morning beside the broken track, hands wrapped around the cup, watching steam rise from beasts and men alike. The day has opened, the endless work has begun, and beneath your aching boots, almost hidden under mud, frost, and old hoof marks, the first small promise of a road waits to be made. The master measures the mud as if the mud might be persuaded by numbers. You watch him stand with his rod planted at the edge of the rutted track, cloak pulled close, chin tucked against the damp wind, while the rest of you gather in a loose half-circle that looks almost respectful. Almost. Hob is chewing the last of his bread with the expression of a man betrayed by breakfast, and the brown stray dog sits near your left boot, waiting to see whether civilization improves. The road dips before you, broad and ugly, its middle sagging where cartwheels have dragged through season after season. Water collects in the deepest scars, shining faintly under the morning light. The master points to one rut with the end of his rod and says the new way must rise slightly in the centre. So rain slides off toward the side ditches instead of resting there like a lazy lord in a feather bed. You nod as if this is obvious, though until this morning you've mostly considered roads to be long strips of inconvenience between one cold place and another. Two boys bring a coil of measuring rope from the cart. The rope is knotted at intervals, darkened by years of mud and hands, and one of the older workers spits into his palm before taking it, because some swear rope measures truer if woken with a little warmth. No one can quite agree whether this is craft, superstition, or just a habit invented by men who enjoy spitting, but no one stops him. Medieval engineering, you are learning, contains more moisture than the songs mention. You take one end of the rope and walk where the master sends you, stepping carefully along the left verge. Mud sucks at your soles, rushes bend beneath your boots. On the far side, the old ash-bearded worker sets a peg into the ground and strikes it with a wooden mallet. The sound is small and clean in the open air, tap, tap, tap. Another peg follows, then another, marking the line the road should take. Not the road that exists, with all its sulking puddles and crooked habits, but the road imagined by men with rods, debts, wages, and faith in gravel. The master squints toward the town gate behind you, then toward the bare trees ahead. He asks whether the land falls more sharply near the ditch. Everyone looks. Everyone has an opinion. The youngest boy says it leans east. Hob says the whole world leans toward trouble. One of the women, Maud, who's been quiet until now, steps into the mud, presses her heel into the ground, and watches where the thin water trembles around it. She says the water creeps south, toward the older roots. The master looks, then nods. Maud does not smile, but there is a slight satisfaction in the way she wipes her hands on her apron. You follow the line of pegs farther down the track. Beneath one shallow patch of mud, your spade strikes something hard. The shock travels up your arms. You scrape at it, expecting a loose field stone, but a flat grey slab emerges, worn smooth at one edge, sunk deep into the clay. Another lies beyond it, then another, irregular but strangely deliberate, like the last teeth of some buried giant. Old paving, someone murmurs. The men gather, even the master crouches, brushing mud away with gloved fingers. Some swear these are Roman stones, left from a time when roads were straight, soldiers marched like iron, and every hill had someone standing on it demanding taxes. Others say they are no older than the grandfather of the miller, which is still old enough to deserve respect but less impressive at supper. No one can quite agree whether the Romans came this far with proper paving or only passed nearby and allowed later folk to borrow their reputation. You look down at the exposed stone, grey under the wet brown clay. It feels strange to imagine other hands placing it, other backs bending, other boots passing over it in rain and summer dust. The road is not only mud, then. It is memory pressed flat by wheels. The master decides the stones are useful if they hold firm, troublesome if they shift, and costly either way. This seems to be his opinion of most things. He orders you to uncover the stretch carefully, so the old foundation can be judged. You kneel with the others, using smaller tools now, scraping mud from the edges, easing clay away without lifting what still belongs beneath. It is slower work than shoveling, and oddly calmer. Your breath shortens less. Your hands move close to the ground. The dog comes near to sniff the opened clay, then sneezes and retreats with wounded dignity. A cart rattles behind you from the town gate. The farmer with turnips is still waiting, now with a face like weathered oak and patience worn thin. He calls to ask when the road will be passable. The master tells him, soon enough. The farmer looks at the mud, the pegs, the half-buried stones, the workers kneeling in the muck, and decides this answer contains no measurable truth. Still, he waits. Roads teach patience even to people not building them. A pilgrim approaches from the north, his cloak patched in 3 colours, a staff in one hand and a leather bottle at his side. His hat bears 2 badges, one shaped like a scallop shell, another like a tiny arm meant to show some saint's blessed limb. You cannot help wondering how many saints are travelling the roads in pieces these days. The pilgrim steps around the measuring rope and asks whether the way to the abbey is clear. Hob tells him clear is a generous word. The pilgrim laughs softly and says all roads are trials, and mud is good for humility. This is the sort of thing people say when they are not holding a shovel. Still, he blesses the work with 2 fingers, and one of the older women touches the small wooden charm at her throat. It is carved in the shape of a wheel, worn smooth by years of thumb and prayer. She says her mother carried it whenever carts had to cross marshland. Some swear a wheel charm keeps axles from cracking. Others say it only reminds you to check the wheel before trusting it. Even now. It is hard to tell whether wisdom and superstition are separate things or merely cousins who share a bench by the fire. The master stretches the rope again and has you sight along it. You stand at one peg, Maud at another, and the master lowers his head until the line of cord cuts across the muddy track. He speaks of widening the road enough for 2 carts to pass where the ditch allows. Though everyone knows 2 carts meeting here will still produce argument. Delay. and possibly one man invoking every saint from here to Canterbury. He marks places where brushwood must be laid beneath the gravel, where the ground is softest and most hungry. He marks the low side for drainage. He marks where stone must be brought from the quarry. Always more stone. The town behind you grows louder as the day brightens. You hear the creak of the gate, the call of a cellar, the clink of harness, the bark of that same indignant dog inside the walls answering your roadside companion. Smoke rises straighter now from the cottages. A woman shakes, rushes from a doorway, tossing old floor strewing into a heap where chickens immediately begin investigating as if treasure may be hidden in yesterday's dirt. In many houses, fresh rushes are laid when guests are expected or when the smell becomes impossible to defend. You suspect the road builders receive no such ceremony. By late morning, the line of the future road has taken shape in pegs, rope marks, scraped stones, and shallow cuts in the earth. It is not yet a road. It is more like a promise made by tired people to an indifferent landscape. But it has edges now. It has intention. Water already begins to trickle toward the side where Maud said it would, thin and silver in the cold light. You stand with your hands on your hips, breathing through the ache in your shoulders. Mud freckles your tunic. Your fingers are dark beneath the nails. The master passes near you and says the old foundation may save 2 days' labour if it holds. Hob quietly says it may cost 4 days if it does not. Both statements feel equally medieval, hopeful, gloomy, and probably true. When the bell rings again from the town, you barely look up. The sound drifts over the broken road, the waiting cart, the scattered tools, the exposed stones that may or may not be Roman. The dog leans against your boot as if you are now part of its household. Ahead, beyond the measured stretch, the quarry road waits in the pale distance, and you know the next part of the day will be heavier, colder, and full of stone. But for a moment, you remain still beside the pegs, listening to water find its way through the mud, and it seems almost possible that the earth has agreed to be shaped. The quarry road waits beyond the measured mud like a harder kind of morning. You leave the line of pegs behind you, the rope coiled again on the cart, the old stones half covered with damp sacking so no wagon wheel or careless boot unsettles them before judgment can be passed. The master sends a smaller group toward the quarry, and because your hands are already muddy and your shoulders have not yet filed any official complaint, you go with them. The brown dog follows at a careful distance, pretending this is a coincidence. The path climbs away from the low fields, passing hedges gone thin with winter and strips of ploughed earth where frost still clings in the furrows. Crows step about like black-robed clerks inspecting accounts. A shepherd boy watches from the far side of a ditch, his cloak pinned with a thorn, his cheeks red from the cold. He calls that the quarry hill has been noisy since first light, and Hob calls back that stones rarely come down by polite invitation. This is considered a joke, and in the open chill of morning it is enough. You walk beside Maud for a while. She carries a short-handled pick over one shoulder and moves with the steady pace of someone who knows exactly how far the day still stretches. She tells you the quarry belongs to the Lord's manor, though the roadwork is partly ordered by the town, partly blessed by the abbey, and partly paid for by tolls everyone complains about, but secretly hopes someone else will keep paying. No one can quite agree whether the road is for merchants, pilgrims, the Lord's carts, or the souls of poor travellers who simply dislike drowning in ruts. Like many medieval improvements, it seems to belong to whoever is speaking most loudly at the moment. The quarry lies in the shoulder of a low hill, cut open where grey stone shows through the brown earth. It is not a grand place, Not a marble cliff from some emperor's dream, but a rough bite in the land, cold and raw, with stacks of broken rock, sledges, wedges, baskets, and 2 carts waiting with their wheels chocked. Men move among the stone with iron tools and wool caps pulled low. Each strike rings through the air, sharp at first, then swallowed by the hill. Ting, crack, thud. The sounds settle into your bones as surely as the cold. An older quarryman greets the master with a nod and a look that says everything has already gone wrong in several small ways. His hands are wrapped in leather strips, and his beard is dusted pale with stone powder. He leads you to a seam where yesterday's rain has darkened the rock. Iron wedges sit in a row, already bitten into narrow cuts. The quarryman taps each one, listening. Some swear a stone speaks differently when it is ready to split. And the best cutters can hear the change before the crack appears. Even now, it is hard to tell whether this is skill, legend, or the simple fact that people who spend their lives beside stone learn a language the rest of you miss. You stand back as 2 men lift hammers and begin striking the wedges in turn. Not hard at first. Patient, measured, one blow after another, moving along the row so the pressure spreads through the hidden grain. The sound is almost musical, though it is the sort of music that makes wrists ache in sympathy. The quarryman raises one hand. The hammers pause. For a breath, nothing happens. Then the rock gives. A crack opens with a soft, deep note, like winter ice shifting on a pond. The slab loosens, drops a finger's width, and everyone releases the breath they were pretending not to hold. No blood, no drama, no thunder from heaven, just stone deciding, after a great deal of persuasion, to become useful. Hobbes says if bread responded this well to hammering, breakfast would have been improved. Your work begins after the splitting. The larger pieces must be broken smaller, sorted by size and loaded for the road. Broad stones for the base, fist-sized stones for packing, smaller gravel for the surface. The master wants the new stretch firm enough to hold carts through rain, thaw, and the endless punishment of hooves. The quarryman wants his men not blamed when the road sinks anyway. This, you notice, is a delicate partnership built on mutual suspicion. You lift stones into wicker baskets until the handles bite red marks into your palms. You carry them to the cart, dump them, turn back, and do it again. The rhythm is slower than the shovel rhythm, heavier, more final. Mud moves, stone refuses. Each piece has its own shape, its own stubborn edge waiting to catch a finger. Dust gathers on your sleeves. Your breath grows white in the air, somewhere behind you. The dog has found a sunny patch near a pile of rubble and is enjoying road construction at the management level. At midday, the quarrymen stop near a windbreak of stacked brush. Someone opens a cloth bundle of coarse bread, onions, and a wedge of hard cheese with a rind like old leather. A small jug of ale passes from hand to hand. You sit on a flat stone, feeling the chill rise through your clothes, and eat slowly. The onion is sharp enough to wake the dead, though perhaps the dead would ask for salt. One man rubs his thumb with a paste of crushed comfrey and lard, saying it draws soreness from the joints. Some swear comfrey knits flesh, bone, and perhaps even poor decisions. No one can quite agree how much is healing and how much is hope. But hope, like lard, is often spread generously. The quarryman tells a tale while you eat. He says that years ago, when his father's father worked this hill, they uncovered a stone with a mark like a red hand deep inside it. Some said it was a sign from a murdered traveller. Some said iron in the rock made the stain. Some said saints leave warnings in stone where roads are meant to pass. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the marked stone was taken to the abbey wall, buried again, or quietly broken for paving, because a good flat stone should not be wasted on mystery. You look at the grey pieces waiting in the cart and wonder what they remember, if stones remember anything. Rain, perhaps, weight, roots pressing slowly through cracks, the heat of long summers, the cold patience of winter. The hands that lift them now will be forgotten, but the stones may remain under wheels for years, perhaps longer than the roofs of cottages, longer than the names of the men who argue over tolls, longer than Hobbes' complaints, though that seems difficult to believe. After the meal, the sky clouds over, the light flattens. A small wind comes down the hill, carrying the smell of wet leaves and distant smoke. You help load the first cart fully, placing larger stones at the bottom, smaller stones above, while the carter checks the axle pins with anxious care. He keeps a sprig of rowan tied beneath the cart bed, red berries shriveled but still clinging. He says it keeps bad luck from the wheels. Maud says grease keeps bad luck from the wheels. The carter says both may be true, and in a world with this much mud, refusing extra protection seems arrogant. The oxen are brought forward, broad heads lowered, breath steaming. Their yoke creaks as they lean into the load. For a moment, the cart does not move. The wheels sink slightly into the churned quarry ground. The carter clicks his tongue. One ox tosses its head. The other appears to be considering a religious life. Then the wheels turn with a groan, and the cart lurches forward, heavy with the hill's broken bones. You walk beside it on the descent, one hand near the cart's side, though you could not stop it if it chose to misbehave. The path down is slick in places, and every rut seems suddenly important. The carter murmurs to the oxen as if speaking to sleepy children. Behind you, the quarry keeps ringing, more wedges, more hammers, more stone being persuaded into pieces. Ahead, the road waits for its new burden. By the time the low fields come back into view, your arms feel longer than they were at dawn. The town wall sits in the distance, dark against the clouded sky. Smoke rises beyond it, and somewhere a bell sounds again, faint through the cold air, at the broken stretch. The workers look up as the first cart arrives. The measured pegs still stand. The old buried stones lie under their damp sacking. Water still creeps toward the ditch Maud chose. The cart stops beside the mud, and the carter wipes his nose with the back of his hand. The master lifts one stone, weighs it, turns it, and nods once. It is not praise exactly. Praise would be too warm for the weather, but it is enough. You set your hands to the cart bed and begin unloading, stone by stone, into neat piles along the road's edge. The dog settles nearby with the air of an inspector. The wind moves through the bare hedges, your palms sting, your back aches, and the day is only half spent. Yet as the stones gather beside the rutted track, grey against the brown mud, you feel the work becoming visible. The earth has been measured, the hill has been opened, the road, still broken, has begun to receive its bones. The cart settles beside the broken road with a low wooden groan, as if it has carried not stone but all the sorrows of winter. You stand with the others at its side, hands open, shoulders tired, breath showing pale in the cooling air, while the oxen lower their heads and steam quietly in their yoke. The quarry dust still clings to your sleeves, mud still clings to your boots. Somewhere between the two, you begin to feel less like a person and more like one of the road's ingredients. The master orders the stones sorted before they are laid, large ones to the left, fist-sized ones to the right, small gravel in a heap near the old foundation. This sounds simple until everyone starts deciding what large means. Hob holds up a stone the size of a turnip and says it is clearly large, unless compared to a cow, a cathedral, or the master's opinion of himself. Maud takes it from him without ceremony and tosses it onto the middle pile, which settles the matter better than argument. You unload slowly, stone after stone, each piece knocking against the next with a dull clack. The sound becomes part of the day's rhythm: cart creak, ox breath, stone fall, boot suck, someone muttering about wages. A boy with red ears carries smaller pieces in a basket, staggering under the weight but refusing help because pride, like mud, appears early and sticks hard. The brown dog watches the whole operation from beside the ditch, occasionally shifting its paws to avoid the cold water. More carts arrive from the quarry before long, each one coming down the lane with its own complaints. One has a squeaking axle, one leans slightly to the left. One is driven by a man who crosses himself every time the wheels hit a rut, which means he is either very devout or very familiar with wheels. Beneath one cart bed hangs a small charm made from bent iron and a strip of red thread. Some swear red thread confuses spiteful spirits that like to tangle axles. Others say it is there because carters will tie anything to anything and call it wisdom. No one can quite agree whether the charm helps, but no cart owner is eager to remove it and find out. Then comes the bad wheel. You hear it before you see the trouble: a heavy crack, a shout, the sharp bawl of an ox, and then the deep, miserable lurch of a loaded cart sinking sideways into the road. Everyone turns. The second quarry cart has struck the edge of an old rut near the bend, and one of its wheels has split at the rim. Not shattered, not ruined beyond hope, but opened enough that every man present stares at it with the same expression people reserve for tax collectors and toothache. The carter swears softly, then remembers the pilgrim nearby and changes the oath into something about St. Eligius, patron of metal workers, horses, and apparently desperate wheel rims. The oxen stand bewildered, their great sides moving in slow clouds of breath. The cart bed tilts. Several stones slide to one side with a grinding sound, and for a moment everyone waits to see whether the entire load will spill into the mud like a lord's promises after supper. It holds. The master closes his eyes briefly. You suspect he's praying, though perhaps not in words approved by any monastery. The crew gathers around the wheel. The rim is cracked near the join, the wooden felloe split under the iron tire. The wheelwright is inside the town. Someone says, "The town gate is half a mile back." Someone else says, "The cart is full, the road is soft, the afternoon is fading, and the oxen have opinions of their own." Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the wheel cracked because of the rut, the load, the cold, or the carter's decision to keep using a wheel everyone had been side-eyeing since Martinmas. You help unload part of the cart by hand to ease the weight. The work is awkward because the cart leans, and the stones have wedged themselves together like monks at a feast bench. You reach, lift, pass, stack, reach, lift, pass, stack. Your palms, already sore, begin to burn. Mud splashes your hose. A stone slips and lands near Hob's foot, and he informs it that if it wished to be a cathedral, it should have learned manners. Maud kneels by the wheel with the carter and studies the crack. She sends a boy running to fetch wedges, rope, and a spare length of ashwood from the tool cart. While he goes, she pulls a small knife from her belt and trims loose splinters from the rim. Her hands are calm. The carter watches her as if she's a physician attending a prince, though the patient is round, wooden, and not expected to survive Lent without further trouble. The repair is not elegant. It is the sort of repair made on cold roads under grey skies by people who know elegance is what happens when you have benches, daylight, and enough money. The split rim is bound with rope soaked in water so it will tighten as it dries. A wooden brace is wedged against the damaged section. The iron tyre is checked with a hammer. Someone suggests warming the tyre at a fire to settle it tighter, but there is no proper fire and no time. Only a smoky handful of damp twigs that would embarrass a candle. An old worker spits on the wheel and makes a sign with 2 fingers. Some swear this keeps the road from taking the whole cart. Even now, it is hard to tell whether he believes it or simply wants the wheel to know it has been noticed. At last, with half the load removed and the brace lashed in place, the carter clicks to the oxen. Everyone stands clear, though not very far clear, because there is nowhere dignified to stand in a muddy lane. The oxen lean forward, the yoke creaks, the damaged wheel turns once, slowly, then again, wobbling like a drunk attempting courtly dance. A small cheer rises from the crew, not joyful exactly, but relieved, which is the working man's version of joy. The cart limps toward the stone piles, and you walk beside it, one hand hovering near the side, useless but loyal. The dog trots after you, now fully convinced that human affairs require supervision. When the cart finally reaches the stretch of road where the pegs stand, the master allows the remaining stones to be unloaded close by. No one wastes breath celebrating. Celebration would require energy, and most of yours is currently stored in the road under your boots. By late afternoon, the first layer of stone begins to go down. The old foundation is uncovered again, and where it holds firm. Larger stones are set into the wet earth around it, packed close with smaller pieces hammered between them. You kneel with the others, placing stones by hand, turning each one until it sits steady. The work is strangely intimate. You learn the shape of each piece through your fingers. Some want to rock, some settle at once. Some appear designed by nature specifically to annoy road builders. The master walks the line, testing with his staff. Tighter, he says. Lower there, more packing. He says it so often the words begin to sound like a prayer. Tighter, lower, more packing. Perhaps every trade has such prayers. The baker has knead and wait. The monk has read and pray. The road builder has lift, curse quietly, and try again. The sky dims toward pewter. A thin mist rises from the ditch. From the town comes the smell of supper fires, and it reaches you with almost cruel tenderness, pottage thickening in pots, onions softening in fat, maybe a little smoked fish if someone has had luck or credit. Your stomach answers. Hob tells it to be patient. His own answers louder. A second bell rings from the distant abbey, soft through the fields. The repaired cart stands empty now, its bad wheel propped with a stone as if resting an injured ankle. The oxen crop at frost-browned grass. The carter has tied another strip of red thread to the brace, because one may as well reinforce both wood and fate. You straighten at last and look down the short stretch you have worked. It is rough, uneven, unfinished, but not merely mud anymore. Stones fill the worst hollow. Water gathers at the side instead of in the middle. The ruts are interrupted. The old buried slabs, Roman or not, sit among new stone like elders among children. Your back aches. Your fingers are cold. Your tunic smells of clay, sweat, and oxen, which is probably not a perfume favoured at court. Yet the road has changed under the day's burden. Carts have groaned, wheels have cracked, oxen have leaned, and human hands have moved pieces of a hill into the soft low place where travellers used to sink. As dusk settles near the town wall, the master calls an end to the hauling. Tools are gathered, loose stones are stacked. The broken wheel will wait for the wheelwright in the morning. You take one last look at the bend where the cart nearly failed, and the dog presses against your leg as if reminding you that supper is the most important improvement any civilization can provide. Together, you turn back toward the gatehouse, where torchlight has begun to glow beneath the arch and rain-heavy clouds gather above the wall. Rain begins before you reach the gatehouse, not with thunder or drama, but with a quiet, steady persistence that feels much more medieval and much less negotiable. It comes down in fine cold threads, silvering the road, darkening the wool on your shoulders, turning the fresh-laid stones behind you slick and shining. The town gate glows ahead, its torches blurred by mist, its archway open like the mouth of some tired beast that has seen too many carts and judged them all. You trudge beneath it with the others, boots dragging mud over the worn stones. The sound changes at once. Outside, rain falls into ditches and fields. Inside the gate passage, it ticks from timber beams, drips through old cracks, and gathers in hollow places where countless wheels have passed. You smell wet horse, old straw, smoke from the guardroom, damp leather, and the sour warmth of too many people sheltering in too little space. The gatehouse is crowded. A pair of merchants stand near one wall with bales wrapped in waxed cloth, watching the rain as if personally offended by clouds. A pilgrim sits on an upturned basket, rubbing one foot and whispering a prayer to a saint whose patience must be enormous. 2 town guards lean on spears beside the toll table, their helmets pushed back, their faces lit by a brazier that gives more smoke than heat. A toll collector with ink-stained fingers bends over a wooden board, counting coins so carefully you might think each one has feelings. The road crew enters like a small weather system of mud, stone dust, and exhaustion. Hob shakes rain from his cloak and accidentally shares it with a merchant's sleeve. The merchant looks at him as if splashed by a peasant is a new category of tragedy. Hob apologizes with such deep sincerity that no one believes him. The master steps to the toll table to speak with a collector. There is always talk around gates who may pass, who must pay, whose cart counts as loaded, whether a church cart is exempt, whether a lord's seal applies to gravel, timber, turnips, or only the kind of goods that make clerks feel important. No one can quite agree whether tolls maintain roads, or roads merely provide a good excuse for tolls. The collector says fees are needed for bridge planks, ditch clearing, gate repairs, and other necessities. The carters say the road outside could swallow a bishop's mule and still ask for dessert. You settle near the wall, where rainwater runs down between 2 stones and disappears into the rushes scattered across the passage floor. Even here, under shelter, rushes soften the stone and gather the day's filth, though these are old, crushed flat, and fragrant in a way best described as honest. A woman with a basket of eggs guards it beneath her cloak, murmuring that if one cracks, her husband will blame the road, the rain, the town, and possibly the moon. Some swear eggs carried through a gate in bad weather should be touched with iron to keep them whole. Even now, it is hard to tell whether iron protects eggs or whether people simply enjoy giving iron more responsibilities. The brown dog slips in after you and immediately becomes everyone's problem. It noses toward the pilgrim's bag, then the egg basket, then Hob's boot. The guard by the brazier says dogs are not permitted to loiter. The dog sits, presenting itself as a lawful resident. This seems to settle the matter. Outside the arch, the rain thickens. Beyond the gate, the road you worked all day fades into grey. The newly stacked stones mere shadows along the ditch. Travellers gather, unwilling to move on while the sky empties itself. A cart of firewood waits just beyond the portcullis. The driver hunched under a hood, his horse steaming and deeply unimpressed. A woman from the market holds a bundle of dyed thread beneath her cloak and tells anyone listening that blue thread must never get wet before sail. Or it remembers the river and fades. Those who tell such things never fully agree whether cloth truly remembers, but dyers, like road builders. No water has a wicked sense of humour. The toll collector looks up from his coins and asks the master whether the road will be passable by morning. The master says the new stones need packing, the ditches need cutting deeper, the broken wheel needs mending, and the rain needs to stop behaving like an unpaid enemy. The collector writes something down. You suspect the written words are shorter and less useful. A monk appears in the gate passage, hood drawn low, sandals dark with the rain. He carries a small covered basket and a staff polished smooth by travel. His abbey lies down the road, the one whose bells drifted through the fields earlier, but he has come into town for wax, salt, and perhaps gossip disguised as errands. He nods to the master, then to the toll collector, and his eyes move briefly over the rolled road plans tucked beneath the master's arm. You notice the glance because it is quick. Too quick, and because the monk's face is otherwise mild as boiled oats. The same monk from the Abbey guest house, Maud murmurs, though you have not yet slept there tonight. Or perhaps she says only that he looks like one of them. In this rain and dim torchlight, all monks seem made of wool, shadow, and secrets. Some swear monks can tell the hour by the smell of candle smoke alone. No one can quite agree whether this is holiness or simply practice. The master tucks the plans deeper beneath his cloak. You warm your hands near the brazier, though the smoke stings your eyes, and the heat reaches only one side of each finger. A guard offers a clay cup of thin ale to the road crew, passing it around with the weary generosity of men who know cold work when they see it. The ale tastes sour, smoky, and faintly of the cup itself. It is wonderful. Hob drinks and says he has had worse in places charging double. The guard asks where. Hob says his cousin's wedding. The rain keeps tapping. Time slows under the gatehouse. People shift, sigh, bargain, complain softly, and share scraps of news. A merchant says bandits have been seen near the forest track. A pilgrim says not bandits, only charcoal burners with bad posture. The egg woman says both are hungry men with trees behind them, which seems close enough. The toll collector says the manor court will complain if the road is widened near the south field. The master says the manor court complains when geese cross the lane in the wrong order. A little laughter moves through the passage, low and tired. You lean back against the cold stone and feel the day settle into your body. The quarry, the cracked wheel, the heavy stones, the measured mud, all of it returns in dull pulses through your arms and back. Rainwater drips from your hair to your collar. The dog curls near your feet, having chosen your boot as its hearth. Beyond the gate, the road darkens. Behind you, inside the town, windows glow with candlelight, and somewhere a pot lid clatters, promising supper to people with roofs. At last the rain softens, though it does not stop. The master decides the crew will not return to the work stretch tonight. The road is too slick, the light too poor, and even stubborn men must occasionally pretend to be sensible. Instead, you will pass through town, take the Abbey Road when the shower eases, and shelter at the monastery guest house before dawn work begins again. The toll collector lifts the gate ledger away from a drip. The merchants gather their bales. The pilgrim stands with a wince and taps his staff against the stones. You pull your cloak tighter, feeling its wet weight cling to your shoulders. The monk has already disappeared into the dimness beyond the passage, leaving behind only the faint smell of damp wool and beeswax. You step from beneath the gatehouse arch into the town street, where rain glimmers in the torchlight and runs along the gutter in narrow black ribbons. The road within the walls is cobbled but uneven, shining under hooves and boots. Shutters are closing. A child watches from a doorway with solemn eyes. The bell above the gate gives one small movement in the wind but does not ring. Behind you, outside the wall, the unfinished road waits under rain, stones settling slowly into mud. Ahead, through the wet street and toward the darker Abbey Lane, supper, suspicion, and a smoky roof awaiting. You follow the master's cloak through the torchlit drizzle, the dog padding close behind as if it, too, has business with monks. You follow the master's cloak through the wet street while the town folds itself inward for evening. Rain slides from steep roofs and patters into gutters, carrying scraps of straw, old rushes, and the day's market dirt toward the lower gate. The cobbles under your boots are slick, though after the broken road outside, even bad cobbles feel like the work of angels with excellent funding. Smoke presses low between the houses. Candlelight glows behind horn-paned windows. Somewhere a woman laughs. Somewhere a baby cries. And somewhere a man argues with a latch as if the latch has made a personal insult against his family. The Abbey Lane turns away from the square, passing beneath a leaning row of timber houses where upper stories nearly touch across the street. You duck without needing to, simply because the whole place seems to be bending over you. The brown dog trots at your heel, damp, determined, and now apparently attached to the road crew by ancient oath. Hobbs says the beast has chosen you because you smell of supper. Maud says the dog has better judgment than most men at market. Both observations may be true. By the time you leave the town by the smaller postern, the rain has thinned to mist. The abbey lies beyond the fields, its dark roof and square tower rising against the last grey of the sky. A bell sounds from within, slow and measured, calling the brothers toward prayer. The sound moves over the wet ground with a softness unlike the town bell, less like command and more like someone reminding the world to breathe. You walk the lane between hedges, passing a roadside cross where strips of cloth hang from a thorn bush nearby. Some swear tying a rag there carries sickness or sorrow away with the wind. No one can quite agree whether it works, but the branches are crowded with little offerings, faded by weather, each one a hope too small to carve in stone. You touch your cold fingers together as you pass, not quite praying, not quite refusing. The monastery gate is lower than the town gate but sturdier, oak darkened by rain and banded with iron. A lay brother opens after the master knocks with the butt of his staff. Warmth spills out first, not great warmth, not noble warmth, but the humble breath of enclosed walls, animals somewhere under shelter, damp wool drying, and food being kept alive in a pot. To you, it feels nearly royal. Inside, the guest house stands apart from the cloister, a long low hall with soot-black rafters and rushes on the stone floor. Beeswax candles burn near a small painted image of St. James, their flames steady in the still air. The room smells of pottage, smoke, wet leather, and the faint sweetness of wax. Pilgrims sit on benches along one wall. Two merchants whisper over a chest. A carter sleeps upright with his mouth open, which is perhaps the purest form of trust a man can offer a monastery. You are given a place near the hearth, and for a moment you do nothing but hold your hands toward the fire. The heat hurts before it comforts, your fingers prickle. Steam rises from your sleeves. The dog collapses beside your feet with a sigh so theatrical that even the lay brother looks amused. Medieval hospitality, you discover, is mostly a bench, a bowl, and the deep blessing of not being rained on. Bowls of pottage arrive, thick with barley, onions, and perhaps a few shreds of something that once had ambitions. You eat with a wooden spoon, slowly at first, then with the quiet devotion of a person whose stomach has been composing hymns since afternoon. There is coarse bread, dark and firm. There is a little smoked fish, salty enough to wake your tongue. Ale is poured into shared cups, thin but honest. Hobbes says the pottage has improved his view of monastic life, though he remains unsure about the early bells, the vows, and the amount of reading. Across the hall, an ink-stained scribe sits near a candle, scraping a quill with a small knife. He has the pale, inward look of someone who spends more time with letters than weather. Beside him lies a wax tablet covered in marks. Some swear scribes place a charm of rue or betony near their ink to keep mistakes and devils from creeping into the lines. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the herb frightens devils or merely smells strong enough to keep the scribe awake. The master unrolls the road plan on the table after supper, weighting one corner with a knife and another with a heel of bread. The drawing is not grand lines, marks, a ditch, the low place, the quarry route, the stretch of old paving that may or may not be Roman. Still, under candlelight, it looks strangely important, as if the muddy lane outside has become a secret known only to ink. That is when you notice the monk again. He stands near the far pillar, hood lowered now, face narrow and calm, hands tucked into his sleeves. He was at the gatehouse, or so you believe, the same soft step, the same mild eyes that see too much and announce nothing. He speaks quietly with the lay brother, but his gaze slips now and then toward the table, toward the plan, toward the master's hand resting over the mark where the road widens near the abbey field. No one says anything. Suspicion in a monastery guest house moves gently, like smoke. Maud notices too. She breaks a piece of bread without looking up and murmurs that some men wear silence like armour. Hobb asks whether monks are allowed armour. Maud says they have rules for everything else, so probably. The monk approaches at last and asks after the day's work. His voice is mild, nearly drowsy. The master answers with care. The road is wet, the foundation uncertain, the stone good, the broken wheel unfortunate but not fatal. The monk nods at each word. He says the abbey prays for safe passage along all roads, especially those that bring pilgrims and alms to holy doors. His smile is small. No one can quite agree whether it is kindness, habit, or calculation. He reaches toward the plan, not touching it, only gesturing over the drawn line. The widening here, he says, comes close to the lower meadow. The meadow floods. The master replies, the road must rise. The meadow belongs to St. Cuthbert. The mud belongs to everyone. For a moment, the fire snaps in the hearth, and all the small sounds of the hall seem to lean close as spoons in bowls. Rain at the shutters, the carter's snore, the dog's slow breathing. Then the monk nods again, as if the answer pleases him, or confirms something he already feared. He says saints are generous, but land stewards less so. It is a delicate sentence, wrapped in wool. After he leaves, the master rolls the plan tighter than before and ties it with cord. You do not ask questions. The day has already carried enough weight. Yet you keep seeing the monk's hand hovering over the inked road, the drawn line passing near the abbey meadow, the way his eyes measured it as carefully as any rope across mud. Night deepens outside. The guest house settles into warmth and small discomforts. Wet cloaks hang from pegs, boots are set near the wall, pilgrims murmur prayers before sleep, a merchant counts coins under his breath, which may be his form of prayer. The lay brother scatters fresh rushes near the hearth, covering the worst of the day's dirt with green sweetness. He adds a handful of dried lavender, saying it discourages fleas and restless dreams. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether lavender can manage either task, but the scent is gentle, and tonight that is enough. You lie down at last on a straw pallet beneath a wool blanket that scratches your chin and warms your bones by slow negotiation. Above you, soot-dark rafters vanish into shadow. A candle burns low near the saint's image, its beeswax scent mingling with smoke and damp wool. The dog turns twice, presses against your side, and sleeps as if it has laboured since dawn. Beyond the wall, the unfinished road lies in darkness, stones settling, ditches filling, pegs standing in the rain. Somewhere in the abbey, the suspicious monk walks softly under cloister arches, perhaps thinking of meadows, tolls, saints, and mud. You close your eyes to the hush of the guest house, the distant bell, and the fading warmth of the hearth, knowing that before first light, the bells will call you back into the cold. The bell finds you before the light does. It moves through the guest house in a slow, bronze murmur, not loud, not harsh, but deep enough to pass through wool, straw, dream, and bone. You wake with your cheek pressed to the edge of the blanket and one arm trapped beneath the warm weight of the dog, who seems to believe morning is a rumour best ignored. For a breath, you do not know where you are. Then the smells return: damp rushes, old smoke, beeswax, wet boots, pottage gone cold in the pot, and the faint animal warmth of too many tired travellers sleeping under one roof. The bell sounds again. Somewhere beyond the wall, monks rise for prayer, their sandals whispering over stone. You lie still, listening to the guest house shift around you. A pilgrim coughs. Hob groans softly and tells no one in particular that if heaven rings bells this early, he may need to reconsider his ambitions. Maud is already sitting upright, tying her hair beneath a cloth, her movements small and efficient in the dimness. You ease your arm free from under the dog. It opens one eye, judges you, and goes back to sleep. The candle near St. James has burned low, leaving a curved lip of wax along its side. Beeswax candles are dearer than tallow, cleaner and sweeter, fit for altars and houses with more coin than smoke. Here, even the half-burned stub feels like a kindness. Its flame trembles as the door opens and a lay brother steps in with a covered lantern. He wakes the road crew with soft words, though soft words before dawn are still insults if they require boots. You sit up. Cold waits just beyond the blanket. It slides into your sleeves and touches the back of your neck. The rushes underfoot are chilled and slightly damp, but the lavender scattered last night still gives off a bruised, gentle scent when you stand. Some swear lavender keeps away fleas, fever, and sorrowful dreams. No one can quite agree whether it does all three, but you slept without scratching much, which in this world counts as evidence. Breakfast is a quiet affair. A lay brother ladles thin ale into wooden cups and sets out coarse bread with a little soft cheese. There is no grand feast, no roasted swan, no shining trencher piled high for noble guests. There is only bread tough enough to negotiate with, cheese sharp on the tongue, and ale that tastes faintly of smoke and barrel. Medieval mornings, you're learning, do not ask whether you're ready. They simply place bread in your hand and point toward the door. The master sits at the end of the table with a rolled plan beside him, tied in cord and tucked close. His eyes are shadowed from poor sleep, Across the hall, the suspicious monk appears briefly in the passage, hood up, hands hidden in his sleeves. He does not enter. He only pauses as if listening for something, then continues toward the cloister. Some swear monks can walk so silently because they practice humility. Others say it's because monastery floors are full of people trying not to wake abbots. Even now, it's hard to tell whether holiness or habit makes the softer step. You pull on your boots. The leather is cold and stiff, and the mud from yesterday has dried in ridges along the seams. You knock them lightly against the wall, scattering flakes of road onto the rushes. The dog, now awake because food exists, noses at your hand. You give it a crumb of bread. It accepts this as a legally binding agreement. Outside, the abbey yard lies under a skin of frost. The rain has passed, leaving the world washed and bitter. The sky is a dark blue bowl, paling in the east. Cloister roofs gleam wet. Smoke rises from the kitchen house. Somewhere a horse stamps in a stable. The bell has stopped, but its memory seems to hang in the air. You cross the yard with the crew, breath smoking, tools over shoulders, cloaks tight at the throat. At the gate, the lay brother gives the master a small packet wrapped in cloth-dried herbs for sore hands. He says, from the infirmary, comfrey, yarrow, and a pinch of rue. Hob sniffs it and says it smells like a ditch trying to become medicine. Maud tucks it into her pouch anyway. In many places, herbs are trusted with work no prayer can finish. Yarrow for cuts, comfrey for bruises, rue against ill air and hidden harm. No one can quite agree where remedy ends and charm begins. But sore hands are not proud. You step out onto the abbey lane. Frost has silvered the hedges. The strips of cloth tied near the roadside cross hang stiff and pale, like small frozen prayers. The dog trots ahead, then circles back, delighted by cold grass and the possibility that every ditch contains breakfast. Beyond the fields, the town wall is a dark line, and beyond that, the road stretch waits beneath its new stones. The walk back is quieter than the walk to supper. Everyone is folded inward, saving warmth and words. Your body remembers yesterday before your mind fully does the pull in your shoulders, the tenderness in your palms, the deep ache near the hips from lifting stone. Yet the rhythm of walking helps. Step, breath, staff tap, cart creak somewhere behind you. The world wakes slowly around the road crew. A rooster calls from a distant yard. A woman opens a cottage door and throws out old rushes in a damp bundle. A boy leads 2 pigs toward the stubble, and the pigs move with the confident disorder of minor nobles. As dawn loosens over the fields, you reach the broken stretch. The road looks different in the frost. The stones laid yesterday sit pale and hard in the mud, their edges outlined in white. The ditches glimmer. The old foundation, covered again with sacking, holds its silence. The cracked wheel cart stands near the verge where it was left, its repaired rims stiff with rope, red thread darkened by wet. It looks both ridiculous and heroic, which may be the proper state of most working things. The master walks the stretch first, tapping with his staff. The sound changes from mud dull to stone sharp and back again. He listens. The crew listens with him. Some places hold, some places shift. Where water gathered overnight, the surface must be lifted and packed again. Where the ditch carries the flow toward the alder roots, Maud allows herself a small nod. The road has not failed in the night. That is not victory, exactly. But it is close enough to warm you. Work begins in the blue-grey light. You kneel by the stones and pull smaller gravel into the gaps with your hands. The cold bites through your fingers until movement wakes them. Wooden mallets strike, Spades scrape, baskets pass. No one speaks much. The first hour belongs to breath, tools, and the lingering dream of beds left behind. You feel half asleep and fully present, as if the body can labour while the mind still drifts under soot-black rafters. A cart from the quarry arrives slowly, the oxen's breath blooming in the dawn. The carter has brought the mended wheel from town, strapped upright in the cart bed like a round wooden saint. The wheelwright has bound the rim properly and tightened the iron tyre. He also sent word that anyone overloading it again is invited to carry the stones personally. This message is received with respect. The first sunlight touches the road as you spread gravel over the lower patch. It catches in puddles, on frost, on the master's measuring rod, on the pilgrim badge of a traveller passing toward the abbey. The traveller pauses to watch, then steps carefully along the verge rather than across your fresh work. This small courtesy feels almost grand. By mid-morning, warmth begins to gather through the labour. Your cloak lies folded on a hedge. Your breath no longer smokes so strongly. The dog sleeps on the folded cloak, which was not discussed but has clearly been decided. You work in steady quiet, returning to the same motions lift, place, pack, level. The road takes shape slowly, not with glory, but with repetition. And in that repetition, under pale sun and far-off bells, you feel the strange comfort of being one among many hands, all persuading a wet piece of earth to carry the weight of the world a little better. By the time the sun rises above the hedges, the road is no longer blue with frost but brown, grey, and shining in all the places where water still has opinions. You kneel near the softest stretch, where the ground dips toward the alder roots and seems determined to swallow every stone offered to it. The master says this part needs brush beneath the road, a woven bed of hazel, willow, and thorn laid across the wet earth before the heavier stones go down. Otherwise, he says, the gravel will sink and vanish by spring. Hob looks at the mud and says spring may already be underneath, eating. You follow Maud and two boys to the hedge line, where cut branches have been stacked since yesterday. Hazel rods lie in bundles, pale where the bark has been nicked. Willow whips bend easily in the hand, damp and green-smelling. Thorn branches wait like ill-tempered cats. You carry them back in armfuls, the twigs scratching your sleeves and catching at your cloak. The dog trails behind, proudly holding a stick far too large for its mouth, as if volunteering for municipal labour. The brushwood is laid across the wet ground in layers, first lengthwise, then crosswise, woven and pressed down until it forms a rough mat over the worst of the mud. It is humble work, almost hidden work, the kind no traveller will notice when the road is finished. They will praise the smooth gravel, curse the toll, hurry their horses, and never think of the woven stick sleeping underneath, holding everything up in the dark. Medieval life is full of such things, hands unseen, labour buried, comfort built on someone else's cold morning. You crouch with Maud, pushing branches into place while she shows you how to tuck the ends beneath one another so the mat grips itself. She says Marsh Roads has been made like this for longer than anyone can properly remember. Some swear willow is best because it likes wet ground and does not resent being buried there. No one can quite agree whether wood has preferences, but after hauling stone all morning, you're willing to believe almost anything about materials having moods. Once the brush lies thick enough, baskets of smaller stone are poured over it. The first load disappears alarmingly into the weave. The second begins to settle. The third creates a surface your boot can press without sinking to the ankle. You feel the road becoming less like soup and more like something a cart might one day trust. It is not beautiful, it is not noble, but it is deeply practical, and in this weather, practicality has the glow of a holy relic. Beside you, an older worker named Osric ties a strip of linen around the handle of his spade. He says his grandmother told him never to dig wet ground without a pale cloth on the tool, lest the earth think you are stealing from it. Hob says the earth is welcome to file complaint with the manor court. Osric shrugs and keeps tying. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the cloth appeases the earth, protects the hand, or simply marks one spade among 20 others. But no one mocks him too loudly. Tools disappear fast in a road crew, and superstition is sometimes just bookkeeping wearing a hood. The ditching begins after the brush is covered. You move to the roadside where yesterday's shallow channel is widened and deepened. The work is wet, cold, and oddly satisfying. Your spade bites into the bank. You lever up clay. You toss it aside in heavy curls. Water seeps into the cut almost at once, trickling along the new slope toward the alder roots. The master watches the flow with intense attention, as if reading scripture written in mud. Lower there, he says. You lower it. Clear that root. You clear it. Not so much, or the side will fall. You pause, because apparently mud has both too much ambition and too little discipline. The ditch grows by inches. Maud cuts the line cleanly with the edge of her spade. The boys scoop loose clay with wooden shovels. You pull out stones, roots, and one lost horseshoe so rusted it looks like something dug from an ancient battlefield. Osric says a found horseshoe should be hung over a door with the ends up, to hold luck like ale in a cup. Hob says if the ends point down, at least the luck drains toward the floor where most people can reach it, even now. It is hard to tell whether luck prefers architecture. By midday, the sky softens to a pale grey, and the air smells of opened earth, cut willow, wet wool, and distant smoke. A woman from a nearby cottage brings a small pot of warmed ale with a pinch of spice, not out of charity, she insists, but because if the road improves, her husband may stop losing cart pegs in the mud and blaming everyone within shouting distance. The ale is passed around carefully. It tastes of malt, smoke, and something sharp. Perhaps ginger, perhaps hope. You drink and feel warmth spread through your chest. The dog receives nothing, protests silently, and is given a crumb instead. After the rest, you return to packing the brush-laid stretch. Larger stones are placed over the gravel, each one turned and bedded by hand. Smaller pieces are hammered into gaps. The mallets thud in a slow, sleepy rhythm. Thud, scrape, breath. Thud, scrape, breath. Somewhere behind you, the monastery bell marks an hour, faint across the fields. Somewhere ahead, the town gate creaks open for carts that will complain about the road before enjoying it. The suspicious monk appears near the roadside cross in the afternoon, walking with the lay brother who brought herbs at dawn. He does not come close, but he watches the ditch, the brushwood, the widening near the lower meadow. His robe is lifted slightly above the mud, showing careful feet. The master notices him and says nothing. Maud notices him and presses a stone into place harder than necessary. No one can quite agree whether the monk guards abbey land, pilgrim comfort, or some private worry folded beneath his sleeves. You keep working. A strange calm settles over the crew as the day lowers. The brush disappears under stone. The ditch begins to sing softly with moving water. The worst hollow, the place that swallowed wheels and tempers, takes on a firm spine. You walk across it once under the master's eye, slowly, testing each step. It holds. Hob follows and declares himself nearly as heavy as a bishop after Lent, which may be true depending on the bishop. When the final basket of gravel is spread, the surface looks rough but promising, crowned slightly in the middle, sloping toward the ditches like the master described before the mud had numbers. Your body is tired in layers now: hands, back, knees, thoughts. Yet there is a pleasure in seeing water go where it should. A small trickle slides away from the road, clear over clay, carrying silt and bits of leaf toward the ditch instead of pooling under future wheels. As dusk begins gathering beneath the hedges, you stand beside the new drain with your spade planted in the mud. The dog leans against your leg. The old horseshoe lies near the tool cart, waiting for someone to claim its luck. The monk has vanished back toward the Abbey Lane. The brushwood hidden beneath stone will not be seen again unless the road fails. And perhaps that is the best fate for good work here, to disappear beneath daily use, holding firm while carts, pilgrims, merchants, monks, and tired road builders pass over it without falling in. Dusk comes down gently over the half-made road, softening the sharp edges of stone piles and turning the wet ditches into narrow strips of pewter. The day's work slows one motion at a time. A mallet is set aside, a basket is emptied and not filled again. A spade is leaned against the cart wheel. The master walks the brush-laid stretch once more, testing the crowned middle with the end of his staff, listening for hollow places. When he finally nods, no one cheers. Road builders do not cheer when there is still tomorrow waiting. They simply breathe out and begin looking for food. You follow the crew a little way beyond the repaired stretch to a roadside shrine tucked where the lane bends toward the Abbey meadow. It is a small thing, no taller than a man's shoulder, built of rough stone with a weathered wooden roof, and a painted saint inside whose face has faded from years of rain, candle smoke, and travellers asking too much. A few pilgrim badges have been nailed to the wood around it, scallop shells, little crosses, a tiny stamped figure of a bishop with one arm worn almost smooth. Someone has left dried flowers, now brown and curled. Someone else has wedged a coin so thin and clipped it hardly counts as money. Though saints are said to understand small budgets, you settle near the shrine because the ground there is higher and less cruel. The dog circles once, twice, then lies down beside your folded cloak as if claiming the best place by ancestral right. Hob drops onto a stone with a sound halfway between a sigh and a legal complaint. Maud kneels near a little fire that one of the boys has coaxed from dry twigs kept under a cart cover. The flame is small, smoky, and determined, which is more than can be said for many noble households at supper. Food comes out in bundles, coarse bread wrapped in cloth, a strip of smoked fish, salty and dark, a little hard cheese, onions, a small pot of yesterday's pottage warmed over the fire until it bubbles thickly at the edges. You hold your bowl in both hands, letting the heat seep into your fingers before you eat. The first spoonful is barley, leek, smoke, and hunger. It is perfect because you are tired enough to forgive almost anything. The pilgrim from the gatehouse is there too, having chosen the same dry patch. He sits with his staff across his knees and his patched cloak drawn tight. His foot is wrapped in fresh linen, and he tells Maud that a woman in town gave him a salve of goose fat and ground plantain. Some swear plantain leaf draws soreness from blisters and bites, and no one can quite agree whether the goose fat helps the cure or merely makes the pilgrim smell like supper. He seems content either way. The shrine's little saint watches over your meal with painted eyes darkened by age. The pilgrim says it is Saint Foy. Hob says he thought it was Saint Leonard. Osric says it might once have been St. Giles before the rain took liberties with the face. Those who tell the tale never fully agree which saint keeps this bend of the road, and perhaps that is why travellers like it. When trouble comes, several holy names can be tried before despair. Hanging inside the shrine, beneath the faded painting, is a little reliquary box no longer than your thumb, bound in dull metal and fixed behind a cracked scrap of horn. The layfolk call it a relic, though no one you meet can say relic of whom or what. A thread from a saint's cloak, perhaps, a shaving from a pilgrim's staff, a bone chip, though from which blessed person remains a matter of confidence rather than record. Some swear the relic once stopped a cart from overturning at this bend. Others say the cart overturned anyway, but more politely than expected. You look at the small box while chewing your bread. It sits there in candle soot and twilight, mysterious, unimpressive, and guarded by spider silk. Medieval holiness, you're discovering, often has dust in the corners. The master stands apart for a while, looking back toward the road. The repaired stretch lies in the half-light, its new stones pale where they catch the last sky. Water moves properly in the ditch, making a soft sound against roots and clay. Near the lower meadow, the abbey land spreads dark and wet behind a low fence. No monk stands there now, but you remember the suspicious one's careful gaze and the way his finger hovered over the inked plan. No one speaks of him at supper, which means everyone is thinking of him at least a little. A merchant cart passes slowly, the driver asking whether the road is safe. The master says to keep to the left. Avoid the new brush-laid centre until morning, and do not stop in the hollow. The driver nods with the solemn obedience of a man who intends to do whatever his horse prefers. The wheels roll over the firmer edge and do not sink. Everyone watches. The cart moves on into the dimness, bells on the harness tinkling faintly. Hob lifts his bowl. A miracle, he says. The ditch, Maud replies. Same thing if it keeps my boots dry. The fire pops. Smoke drifts toward the shrine and curls under the little roof. The pilgrim pulls a wooden rosary from his sleeve and turns the beads slowly, lips moving without sound. A boy from the crew places the rusted horseshoe found in the ditch beside the shrine, ends upward, just in case luck prefers to be kept near saints. Osric approves. Hob says if luck is in that horseshoe, it has spent a long time lying face down in mud and maybe in a poor mood. You eat the smoked fish carefully, pulling it apart with cold fingers. Its salt lingers on your tongue. The bread scratches your mouth. The pottage warms your belly. Around you, the crew settles into the tired quiet that follows shared labour. No one has much left to prove. The day has already taken its tax from shoulders and backs. Above the fields, the first stars show faintly through thinning cloud. The pilgrim tells a low tale of a road near the western marshes where travellers hear cartwheels at midnight, though no cart appears. Some swear it is the sound of a wagon lost in fog 100 years ago. Others say it is only frogs, which is less haunting but more common. Even now, it is hard to tell whether lonely roads gather ghosts or whether tired travellers lend voices to every ditch and hedge. You listen while the dog dreams beside you, paws twitching as if chasing whatever spirits smell faintly of bread. A cold breeze comes along the lane. You pull your cloak around your shoulders. The shrine candle, a stub of beeswax left by some earlier traveller, flickers in its niche. The faded saint seems to lean in and out of life with each movement of flame. For a while, no one moves. The world is small fire, bowl, breath, road, shrine, dog, the darkening line of hedges. The town bell sounds far behind you, answered after a pause by the abbey bell ahead. Between them lies the road you are building. One muddy mile of human insistence connecting hunger, prayer, trade, and sleep. When supper ends, the master has the tools gathered beneath the cart cover. Stones are stacked away from the wheel track. The little fire is fed once more, not to blaze, but to carry you through the last stretch of evening before you return to shelter. You rise slowly, joints stiff, hands tender, heart strangely calm. Before leaving, you touch 2 fingers to the shrine's rough stone, not because you are certain of the relic, or the saint, or the stories, but because the road is long and certainty is rare. The dog follows, of course. Behind you, the candle glows in the shrine like a small watchful eye. Ahead, the lane bends toward town and market, toward tolls, voices, geese, and tomorrow's confusion. Beneath your boots, the new stones hold in the dark. Morning carries you toward the market square with yesterday's smoke still caught in your cloak and the taste of salted fish lingering faintly at the back of your mouth. The road from the shrine into town is slick but passable, and when you look back once, you see the repaired stretch holding under the pale light, its ditches full of patient water, its stones dull and firm beneath a skin of damp. It is not pretty, but neither are most useful things before breakfast. The town gate stands open, already busy. Carts wait in a crooked line, drivers hunched in wool, horses stamping, oxen blinking, everyone convinced that everyone else is in the way. The toll collector from yesterday sits under the arch with his board and inkhorn, looking rested in the irritating manner of a man who did not haul stone. He recognizes the master and lifts one hand, though the gesture may be greeting, warning, or preparation to ask for money. You pass beneath the gate with the crew and enter the market square, where the town is waking into full noise. Stalls are being raised beneath canvas awnings. Bakers set out dark loaves and flat rounds. Fishwives arrange smoked eels and salted herring in neat rows that shine like dull silver. A woman selling onions calls that hers are sweet enough for a bishop's table, though Hob murmurs that any bishop eating raw onions deserves his visions. Geese wander near the well with the authority of armed knights, hissing at boots, baskets, and possibly sin. The master has come for nails, rope, iron pins, and 2 fresh shovel handles from the smith's yard before the crew returns to the road. It should be a simple errand in a market. Simple errands are where time goes to be buried. First, a wool merchant blocks the way with 3 bales and a grievance. He claims the road work has delayed his cart and cost him a morning's trade. The master explains that the road work is meant to prevent carts from losing whole afternoons in mud. The merchant says this is admirable in theory but inconvenient in practice, which is perhaps the motto of every town ever built. No one can quite agree whether merchants love roads or merely love complaining on them. Then the toll collector calls the master aside to discuss market fees for stone carts entering through the north gate. The master says road stone is not market goods. The collector says anything passing through a gate acquires interest in the ledger. Maud says if mud passes through the gate on everyone's boots, the town must be rich beyond measure. The collector pretends not to hear, which is wise, because Maud's tone has the firmness of well-packed gravel. You wait near a stall where an alewife is setting out jugs beside a chalked board. Her sleeves are rolled, her cheeks flushed from the brewing fire, and a small broom hangs above her stall as a sign of her trade. Some swear a broom outside an alehouse warns away ill luck and souring spirits. Others say it simply tells thirsty people where to stand. Even now, it is hard to tell whether commerce or magic is doing the harder work. She offers the road crew a taste from a wooden cup. and Hob accepts before anyone can explain that taste is not the same as breakfast. The ale is dark, warmish, and stronger than monastery ale. It goes through you like a small friendly torch. You buy a heel of bread to steady it, because medieval wisdom often begins after the mistake. Across the square, a scribe sits beneath a cloth awning, writing letters for those who cannot. His fingers are stained black, and beside him lies a little pot of sand for drying ink. A woman dictates a complaint about a debt while her child watches a rooster steal grain from a sack. The scribe's quill scratches steadily, turning anger into marks. Some swear written complaints carry more weight because ink remembers better than tongues. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether this is true, but manor courts certainly seem to prefer words that can be folded, sealed, and used later against someone. The road crew finally reaches the smith's yard, where heat spills from the forge door and sparks leap in the gloom like tiny angry stars. The smith, broad as a door and blackened to the elbows, shows the master iron pins, nails, and 2 repaired tool heads. The hammer falls while you wait. Bright ring, dull ring, hiss into water. The smell of hot iron mixes with coal smoke, horse sweat, and damp wool. A boy turns the bellows with grave concentration, as if breathing for a dragon. The smith examines the broken cartwheel brace and gives a short laugh. He says it held because Maud tied it, not because the wood deserved mercy. Maud accepts this praise without smiling. The smith also says a strip of red thread does no harm, though if thread could mend wheels, he would be out of business. Hob suggests tying red thread around the toll collector. No one answers, because the idea is tempting in too many ways. By the time the master has paid, argued, received 3 iron pins, rejected 1 crooked nail, and secured a promise for more wedges after noon, the market square has thickened around you. Pilgrims pass with badges shining on hats and cloaks. A butcher sharpens knives. A potter sells little clay lamps. Children chase one another between stalls until a goose chases them both into better manners. A woman offers charms against toothache made from thread knotted 9 times while naming Saint Apollonia. You touch your jaw without meaning to. Some swear the charm works if tied before moonrise. Others say the tooth stops hurting when it is pulled. Medieval medicine has a way of arriving at truth with unnecessary ceremony. The suspicious monk is there too. You see him near the fish stall, speaking with a man in a dark cloak who bears the abbey's small seal on a leather pouch. The monk holds his hands folded, his expression mild, but his eyes move toward the master's bundle of new supplies, then toward the street leading to the south gate and the road beyond. He notices you noticing him. For 1 heartbeat, neither of you looks away. Then he inclines his head politely, as if you are old friends united by mud, bells, and unresolved land questions. You return the nod because refusing would feel rude, and because you're not entirely sure whether monks can report rudeness directly to heaven. The master says nothing, but he has seen him. He gathers the crew with a sharper motion than before. The rope, nails, handles, and pins are loaded onto a handcart. The dog appears from under a baker's stall with a flowery nose and the innocent expression of a creature who has never stolen anything in its life. The baker disagrees loudly. You offer a coin for the missing crust, though Hob insists the dog was only inspecting grain quality on behalf of the town. At last you leave the square, delayed by tolls, geese, ale, iron, gossip, and the ordinary thick weave of town life. The sun has risen higher than planned. The road waits outside with all its unfinished patience. Yet as you pass beneath the gate again, you carry more than supplies. Market noise clings to you, the warmth of the forge, The alewife's broom, the scribe's ink, the glint of pilgrim badges, the monk's watchful nod. Behind you, the square continues its bargaining. Ahead, the repaired stretch leads toward colder fields and then the forest track, where the road narrows under bare branches and every rumour seems to find a shadow. You shoulder a new shovel handle, feel its smooth pale wood against your palm, and step back into the mud, while the dog trots ahead as if a pointed herald of the entire uncertain day. The road narrows after the last cottage, slipping away from the town's noise and into the winter fields as though it would rather not be noticed. Behind you, the market square fades into a blur of bells, geese, bargaining, and the alewife's strong brew warming the memory of your stomach. Ahead, the lane runs pale and damp beneath hedges, then bends toward the forest, where bare branches gather close together like old women whispering over a gate. You carry the new shovel handle over one shoulder, its fresh wood smooth against your palm. The rest of the crew follows with rope, pins, wedges, baskets, and the slow patience of people who know the day has already spent too much time in town. The dog trots ahead, nose low, tail lifted, inspecting the world as if it has been hired by the manor to assess road quality. Hob says the dog should be paid in crusts and official praise. Maud says that is more than most road builders get. The first stretch beyond the fields is firm enough underfoot, helped by frost still hiding in the shaded ruts. Cart tracks run in pairs, filled with grey water where the sun has reached them. The ditches here are shallow, choked with dead grass, and the master studies them with a sadness usually reserved for sick relatives. He marks 2 places with little stakes, promising future labour to people who have not yet forgiven the present. A charcoal burner passes you near the forest edge, leading a small pony loaded with sacks of black fuel. His face is smudged dark, his cloak patched with bits of hide, and he smells of smoke so deeply that he seems less like a man than a hearth that learned to walk. He warns you that the track beneath the trees is slick where leaves have rotted over clay. Some swear charcoal burners know every hidden hollow in the woods because they sleep beside slow fires and listen to the roots talking. No one can quite agree whether roots talk, but the burner's warning proves true within 20 steps. The forest receives you quietly. Frost clings in the shadows, silvering fallen leaves, bramble hooks, and the moss on old stones. The air changes at once, becoming colder, stiller, scented with wet bark, leaf mould, wood smoke, and the faint animal musk of creatures that keep themselves wisely unseen. Branches cross overhead in black lines. Every footfall sounds softer here, swallowed by leaves. The road is less a road than a memory of passing 2 ruts, a raised strip between them, and puddles dark enough to make you wonder whether anything at the bottom has seen daylight since harvest. The master sends you and Maud to clear branches from the side of the track. Hob and Osric begin cutting a small drain where water has gathered near a fallen tree. The boys carry stones from a nearby pile left by some earlier repair, or perhaps by people who simply gave up and abandoned hope in a heap. You drag brush aside, the thorns catching your sleeve and tugging as if the forest wants a toll of its own. A jay cries somewhere above you, sharp and sudden. The dog freezes, then barks once at nothing. The sound runs ahead through the trees and disappears. Hob mutters that forest roads are never empty. He says some swear old boundary spirits sit in the roots and dislike straight lines, which is why tracks twist so much under trees. Osric answers that tracks twist because men avoid bogs, rocks, and landlords. Even now, it's hard to tell whether the forest is haunted or merely badly maintained. You work slowly along the verge. Here and there, you find signs of other travellers, a broken strap, a lost mitten stiff with mud, the imprint of narrow hooves, a scrap of blue thread caught on thorn. A little way off the road stands a small carved post marked with a cross and a notch. Perhaps a boundary marker, perhaps a warning, perhaps both. The master tells no one to move it. In the countryside, stones and posts often hold agreements older than the people arguing over them. And disturbing one can cause more trouble than a cracked wheel. The forest track has its own road-building problems. There is no open field where water can easily run away. Roots grip the ground, lifting it in ridges. Leaves rot into slick layers. Shadows keep frost longer, then release it slowly into mud. You help lay rough stones across the worst puddle. Not a fine road surface. Only stepping and wheel stones enough to carry the next cart. Each stone must be seated between roots, packed with smaller pieces, then tested underfoot. The master calls this temporary. Everyone knows temporary work is often the only kind that survives. Near midday, pale sunlight filters through the branches and turns the frost to droplets. The crew pauses beside a fallen oak, its trunk green with moss, its roots lifted in a dark wall of earth. You sit on your cloak and eat bread with cheese while the dog gnaws a stick beside you, deeply convinced it has contributed. Somewhere nearby, the charcoal burner's slow clamp smokes among the trees, hidden but fragrant, a low mound of turf and earth keeping wood hot enough to blacken but not burn away. It is a delicate craft, Osric says, and easy to spoil. Too much air and the wood becomes ash. Too little and nothing changes. A road, Maud says, is not so different. Hob considers this while chewing. So we are all charcoal, he says. No, Maud replies. Charcoal sells better. A soft laugh moves around the fallen oak. It does not disturb the quiet. It settles into it. After eating, you follow the track deeper to a place where a spring seeps across the road. The water is clear, cold, and entirely inconvenient. It slips from beneath the bank, crosses the wheel ruts, and vanishes under brambles. Around it, the ground has become black paste. The master kneels and touches the flow with 2 fingers, then tastes it, which seems bold considering what roads carry. He says the spring must be led under the track through a little stone culvert, if enough flat stones can be found. Some swear spring water that crosses a road at an angle brings wandering thoughts to travellers, making them miss turnings or forget prayers. No one can quite agree whether water has such influence, though you admit that standing in cold mud after too little sleep does strange things to the mind. The crew begins searching for flat stones. You find one under leaves, slick and heavy. Maud finds 2 near the boundary post. Osric refuses to take a certain mossy slab because he says it has a face. You look and see only lichen, shadow, and exhaustion. But you leave it be. There are enough stones in the world without angering a possible face. The culvert is small, no wider than your arm. You dig a shallow channel, set flat stones along the sides, roof them with broader pieces, and pack clay around them. The spring slips through, hesitant at first, then quicker, chuckling under the road like it has discovered a secret passage. More stones go over the top, then gravel, then leaves kicked aside so no one forgets where the repair lies before it settles. By afternoon, the forest light grows thin and blue. The air cools early beneath the trees. You hear distant axes, a cart somewhere far off, and once the faint cry of a hawk. The dog keeps close now. Even Hob speaks less. The road behind you shows small signs of your passing cleared branches. Firmer stones. A new drain cutting silver toward the ditch. The hidden culvert guiding spring water under the track instead of over it. As you stand to stretch your back, something glints near the base of a tree. You pick it up and rub away mud with your thumb. It is a pilgrim badge, bent and tarnished, stamped with a tiny ship. Perhaps it fell this morning, perhaps last year, perhaps from someone who reached the shrine they sought, or someone who turned back. You tuck it into the edge of the roadside post, leaving it visible for its owner or for luck. The master says the day is falling and the crew must return before the forest grows black. No one argues. You gather tools, cover the stone pile, and turn back along the track. Behind you, water whispers through the new culvert. Ahead, beyond the trees, fields wait with smoke rising from cottages and bells carrying faintly from the abbey. You walk slowly, tired but steady, while the bare branches hold the last light above you like dark fingers around a dying candle. You leave the forest before full dark, stepping from the trees into open fields where the evening sky stretches wide and pale over the stubble. The air feels larger here, though no warmer. Smoke rises from cottage roofs in thin blue lines, and the abbey bell sounds far behind you, gentled by distance. The new shovel handle on your shoulder has lost its clean look already, streaked with mud, darkened by damp, as if the road has accepted it into service. The dog trots close now, less bold after the forest shadows, occasionally looking back as if making sure the trees are not following. Hob says the beast has more sense than most pilgrims. Maud says most pilgrims do not chase sticks into brambles, though she admits some probably would if told a saint had thrown them. The master does not lead you back to the guest house at once. Instead, he turns toward the manor hall beyond the lower fields, where a row of cottages, a tithe barn, and a squat stone chamber stand near an old yew tree. Word has come, he says, that the manor court is sitting late, and the road matter must be answered before tomorrow's work reaches the disputed boundary. This announcement falls over the crew with all the warmth of sleet. No one likes a manor court after a day of labour. A court is mostly benches, complaints, and men with clean hands deciding how muddy hands should proceed. You cross the field path under the first stars. The manor hall glows ahead, torchlight trembling at its doorway. Outside, villagers gather in little knots, tenants in patched wool, a miller with flour dust still in his beard, 2 women carrying baskets, a reeve with a staff, and a clerk holding a wax tablet close to his chest like a newborn. A few geese sleep near the barn, heads tucked under wings, finally silent and therefore almost holy. Inside the hall, rushes cover the floor, though they're old and flattened, carrying the smell of smoke, feet, spilled ale, and damp wool. Beeswax candles burn near the high table for the steward and the lord's men. Tallow dips smoke near the benches for everyone else. This is the sort of arrangement that explains the world without needing a sermon. You stand with the road crew near the back, warming slowly among bodies and torchlight. The steward sits beneath a faded wall hanging showing a hunt. Though the stag has lost much of its thread and now looks more confused than doomed. Beside him, the clerk scratches notes with a stylus into wax. The reeve calls names. Each dispute rises, turns in the smoky air, and settles badly or not at all a boundary hedge cut too far. A pig found in barley stubble, a debt of 3 hens, a missing spade, a widow's claim to winter firewood. Then the road is called. The master steps forward with the rolled plan. The suspicious monk is present too, standing near the side bench beside a man who serves as abbey steward. His hood is lowered, his face is calm, and in this torchlight, calm begins to look expensive. The abbey steward says the widened road threatens the lower meadow, which feeds 2 cows, which give milk for the infirmary, which serves the poor, pilgrims, and the brothers. This is said with such smoothness that even the cows sound holy. The townsman replies that the road serves the market, the abbey, the manor, pilgrims, carts, and any poor soul who prefers not to drown knee-deep in a rut. He says the meadow floods already. He says a proper ditch will save more ground than it takes. He says tolls have been collected for repairs, and repairs must go somewhere besides parchment. No one can quite agree whether the road belongs to the town, the lord, the abbey, the travellers, or the mud itself, which seems to hold the strongest claim. A villager named Anselm rises, cap twisting in both hands. He says the new ditch may cut through the place where his father marked the edge of their strip with 3 white stones. Maud leans toward you and murmurs that she saw only 2 stones and 1 sleepy goose. The clerk asks whether there were witnesses. Anselm says everyone knew. The steward says everyone knowing is not the same as anyone swearing. This seems unfair but familiar. Another woman complains that road widening will bring more merchants past her cottage, and merchants bring noise, dogs, and men asking for directions while standing directly in the herb bed. Hob whispers that the herb bed may be the true heart of the kingdom. You keep your face still because the hall is quiet enough for laughter to become evidence. The master unrolls the plan across a bench. Candlelight trembles over the inked lines. He shows where the road rises, where the ditch runs, where the brushwood has gone beneath the wet stretch, where the culvert in the forest sends spring water under rather than over the track. He speaks plainly, not grandly. Stones must sit here. Water must fall there. Carts need width at the bend. If the ditch is moved too far inward, the road will sink, if it stays. The meadow edge loses a narrow strip but dries faster. The suspicious monk listens closely. At last he says that St. Cuthbert's meadow should not be diminished without compensation. Some swear land given to a saint becomes sharper to bargain over than land held by any living lord. Even now, it is hard to tell whether saints desire boundaries, or whether men desire boundaries and borrow saints to strengthen their voices. The steward asks what compensation is proposed. Silence follows, thick as porridge. The townsman looks at the abbey steward. The abbey steward looks at the master. The master looks briefly as if he would rather be back in the quarry asking stones for mercy. Then Maud speaks. She does not step forward dramatically. She does not raise her voice. She simply says that the ditch silt, once cleared and dried, can be carted to the meadow edge and spread where the ground is thin. The road crew can also lay a small plank crossing for the abbey's cows where the new drain cuts the path. The meadow loses a muddy bite, gains better runoff, and the cows keep their holy breakfast. The hall turns toward her. The steward blinks. The clerk pauses over the wax. The suspicious monk studies her for a long moment, then nods very slightly. It is not gratitude, exactly, but it is not refusal. In manor courts, that may be as close to peace as anyone dares. The decision is written the road may be widened along the marked line. The ditch cut as planned, silt spread after drying, and a cow crossing laid before the next market day. Wages for the extra work will be considered. Everyone hears the word considered and understands it means possibly, eventually, and only after further suffering. The clerk presses the stylus into wax. The reeve repeats the terms. The steward strikes the table with the end of his staff, and just like that, mud, meadow, saint cow, and road are bound together in law, or at least in something that will be argued over again when convenient. You step back from the heat of the benches. Your legs ache from standing after walking, after digging, after lifting. A servant passes with a jug of ale, and the crew is given a little, not much, but enough to wet the throat. It tastes smoky and sour and deeply welcome. The dog, forbidden inside, scratches once at the door and whines with the soft outrage of the excluded. As the court moves on to a complaint about hens, you look around the hall, rushes underfoot, candle smoke above, wool shoulders pressed close, the faded hunt on the wall, the monk in shadow, the clerk's wax tablet holding the road's fate in shallow marks. It seems strange that tomorrow's mud has been shaped tonight by words. When you step outside, the cold meets you like a hand on the face. The dog springs up, instantly forgiving everyone. Stars hang clear above the manor roof. In the distance, the road lies dark between field and forest, carrying the day's work under frost and moonlight. You follow the crew back toward the Abbey guest house, tired beyond talk, while behind you the manor hall glows with arguments that will outlast the candles. The manor hall fades behind you, its torchlit doorway shrinking to a dull orange square in the dark, while the road ahead waits under frost and thin moonlight. No one speaks much at first. The manor court has left its own kind of tiredness in you, not the clean ache of lifting stone or cutting ditches, but the heavier weariness of listening to people wrap mud in words until it becomes law. Your boots strike the frozen path softly. Your breath rises and vanishes. The dog trots so close to your leg that its shoulder brushes you now and then, as if reminding you that not all disputes require witnesses, seals, and a steward with a staff. The master does not lead the crew all the way back to the Abbey guest house. Instead, he turns toward the work site, where the stone piles stand beside the half-made road. The manor decision has settled the question of the meadow, but it has also made the road more valuable by morning. The tools, the gravel, the iron pins from market, the cut brush stacked beneath canvas. These must be watched. Stone is common, yes, but shaped stone beside a road has a way of becoming someone else's doorstep if left unwitnessed overnight. So you keep the watch. A small fire is made near the gravel piles, low and careful, fed with dry sticks saved from the cart cover and a few pieces of hedgewood. The flame bends in the wind, then steadies. Around it, the crew settles into a rough circle. The carts stand dark nearby, their wheels chocked with stones. The broken wheel, properly mended now, leans against one cart like a round old shield. The new ditches glimmer under the moon. Beyond them, St. Cuthbert's meadow lies black and silver, forgiven for now. You pull your wool blanket around your shoulders. It smells of smoke, damp straw, and the guest house, which is becoming almost comforting despite itself. Hob passes a small jug of ale. It is not much, but it warms the mouth and gives the night a gentler edge. Maud unwraps the herb packet from the Abbey infirmary and rubs a little comfrey salve into the cracked skin near her thumb. She offers it to you. The paste smells green, bitter, and fatty. You work it into your palms, and the sting eases just enough to feel miraculous if you are generous. Some swear comfrey can knit bone, mend bruises, and coax tired flesh back toward usefulness. No one can quite agree whether it heals deeply or simply gives workers something to do with their pain. But beside a night fire, with your hands aching from stone and ditch work, you are willing to let the herb have its dignity. The dog curls beside you, nose tucked beneath its tail. Every so often it lifts its head toward the dark road, listens, and settles again. Its ears know more than yours. Far away, beyond the town wall, a bell marks an hour. The sound comes thin through the cold, then fades into the hedges. An owl calls from the direction of the forest, soft and hollow. Hob says owls count souls when they call. Osric says they count mice, which is more practical and probably more profitable. Even now. It is hard to tell whether the night belongs to superstition or appetite. The master sits apart for a while, his back against a cartwheel, the rolled plan tucked beneath his cloak. Firelight touches one side of his face and leaves the other in shadow. He looks older in the dark, not grand, not commanding, only tired and responsible for a line of mud between too many interests. The suspicious monk has not appeared, though you half expect to see his shape by the meadow fence, calm and unreadable. Instead, there are only reeds moving in the wind and the faint glimmer of frost along the ditch edge. A little later, the carter tells a story about a pile of roadstone stolen near Michaelmas by villagers who claimed they were merely borrowing firmness for a barn floor. The phrase pleases Hob greatly. He says he has known several men who borrowed firmness from tavern benches and never returned it. Maud replies that if he keeps talking, the night will grow longer out of spite. You smile into your cup. The watch deepens. One by one, some of the crew doze under cloaks while two remain awake. You and Osric take a turn near the stone piles. You walk the edge of the work site slowly, boots crunching lightly where frost has touched the mud. The new brush-laid stretch is hidden beneath gravel and stone, but you know where it lies. You know the feel of its woven willow under your hands, the way the first stones sank and then held. You know the ditch by the alder roots, the little trickle carrying water where it should go. Work changes a place in the mind before it changes it in memory. Osric carries the rusted horseshoe from the ditch, the one left near the shrine and later brought along because luck, apparently, travels poorly unless supervised. He has tied a scrap of pale cloth to it. He says he will hang it from the tool cart before dawn. Ends upward. Some swear Upton keeps wandering spirits from sitting on axles and making wheels groan. No one can quite agree why a spirit would choose such uncomfortable seating, but the world is wide and people make stranger choices. Near the meadow fence, you pause. The moon brightens the low ground. The abbey's cows are only dark shapes under a shelter, breathing steam into the night. Tomorrow, or soon enough, you will lay there plank crossing because the court has said so, and because Maud spoke sense where men had been making fog with their mouths. The road will widen, the ditch will cut through, the silt will dry, the meadow may drain better. Perhaps everyone will claim they wanted this all along. A soft noise comes from the road. You turn, not sharply, but with the slow caution of tired people who know panic wastes heat. The dog has risen, standing stiff, ears high. The fire pops behind you. Osric grips his staff. From the darkness near the cart comes a shape, low and hunched. It is only the pilgrim from the shrine, limping gently, his patched cloak drawn tight, staff in hand. He apologizes in a whisper, saying he lost the road in the dark and followed the fire. Hob, woken by the dog's low growl, says that following fire is usually how moths and poor decisions begin. Still, the pilgrim is welcomed close enough to warm his hands. He offers a small prayer for the crew and a piece of dried apple from his pouch, which is divided into portions so small they are more idea than fruit. You eat yours anyway. It tastes sweet, leathery, and faintly of summer. The pilgrim notices the roadstones and says travellers will bless this stretch when rain comes. Hob says travellers will complain less loudly, which is the same blessing in rougher clothes. The pilgrim laughs softly. He tells you that roads are remembered by feet, not names. A king may put his seal on a charter, a lord may claim the toll, an abbey may guard the meadow, but the foot knows where mud gives way, where stone holds, where a fire once warmed cold hands. Those who tell such things never fully agree whether pilgrims are wise because they travel, or travel because they cannot settle long enough to become foolish in one place. Near midnight, The cold sharpens. Frost thickens on the carts and tool handles. The ale is gone. The fire sinks low, red rather than gold. You sit with the blanket around you, the dog pressed against your side, the pilgrim asleep near the stones, Hob snoring beneath his hood, Maud awake and staring into the embers as if reading tomorrow there. The master's plan rests secure. The gravel piles remain untouched. The road lies quiet, held in moonlight, half made and waiting. You listen to the small night sounds, water in the ditch, oxen shifting in their sleep, wind combing the hedge, the distant abbey bell marking an hour few people hear. Your body is heavy, but not unhappy. The world has narrowed to warmth, watchfulness, wool, and stone. Above you, the stars are clear as pinpricks in dark cloth, and beneath them the road keeps its silence, carrying nothing for now except frost, memory, and the soft breathing of those who build it. The first cart comes in the hour when night has thinned but morning has not quite taken its place. You hear it before you see it, a low creak, a soft clink of harness, the slow press of hooves against frozen mud. The fire has fallen to red eyes beneath ash. Frost lies over the gravel piles and along the backs of the sleeping carts. Your blanket is stiff at the edge where your breath has touched it, and the dog beside you lifts its head with the grave importance of a gatekeeper. At first, the sound seems like part of a dream. Then Hob wakes with a snort and asks whether the manor court has come back to complain in its sleep. Maud rises without answering. The master's already standing, cloak pulled around him, watching the grey road that leads from the quarry side. A loaded cart emerges slowly from the mist, drawn by 2 oxen whose breath blooms white in the dawn. The carter walks beside them with both hands tucked under his arms, shoulders hunched, cap pulled low. In the cart bed lies a load of timber poles bound for the town, not as heavy as stone, but heavy enough to test a weak road and expose any foolish boasting. Behind it, pale light begins to gather along the eastern hedge. The carter stops before the repaired stretch and calls out softly, asking whether he may pass. His voice carries caution, and you understand it. This is the place carts used to dread. The hollow where wheels sank, tempers cracked, and oxen learn new forms of disappointment. Yesterday it was mud, brush, stone, ditch, and argument. Now it lies before you in the dimness, crowned in the centre, rough with fresh gravel, damp at the edges, but firmer than it has any right to look. The master steps forward and studies the track. He taps once with his staff. The sound is small and solid. Slowly, he says. Everyone wakes then, or nearly everyone. The pilgrim sits up, rubbing his eyes. Osric touches the rusted horseshoe tied to the tool cart, ends upward, because no great test should proceed without giving luck a place to sit. Some swear the first wheel over new road decides the temper of all wheels after it. No one can quite agree whether roads learn from beginnings, but every eye follows the cart as if the road itself is holding its breath. The oxen lean into the yoke. The cart moves. Its front wheels reach the new-laid stones, and for one dreadful, tender moment, nothing seems certain. The left wheel dips slightly where the brushwood lies hidden beneath the gravel. Your hands curl inside the blanket. The dog stands, ears high. The carter murmurs to the oxen in a voice soft enough for children. The wheel turns again, rises, settles, and continues. No sinking. The second wheel follows. Then the rear wheels, heavier under the timber load, roll over the crowned middle. Gravel shifts, but does not give way. Water trembles in the ditch instead of pooling beneath the axle. The cart creaks, the oxen steam. The timber poles knock lightly together, and the whole thing passes across the repaired stretch as if roads have always behaved this reasonably. A quiet sound moves through the crew. Not a cheer exactly. More like a shared breath escaping after being held too long. Hob lifts both hands as if blessing the cart. "Behold," he says. "Civilization," Maud says. "It is one cart more than yesterday." The master watches until the rear wheels leave the new work and reach the older track beyond. Only then does he nod. It is a small nod, but this morning it feels larger than a lord's trumpet, larger than the steward's staff striking the manor table, larger even than the toll collector's ledger, though perhaps nothing is larger than a ledger to the person holding it. The carter stops beyond the hollow and looks back. "Held well," he calls. Those 2 words warm the crew better than the dying fire. Morning opens around you. The sky becomes pearl grey, then pale gold behind the hedges. Frost melts from the stones in small shining beads. The abbey bell rings in the distance, answered by the town bell a little later, the 2 sounds crossing above the road like threads. You gather your blanket and shake off the cold. The dog trots onto the new stretch, sniffs the wheel tracks, and looks deeply satisfied, as if it personally supervised the engineering. Work begins again, but the mood has changed. Not into excitement, this is still a road. Not a coronation, but into a steadier confidence. The fresh wheel marks show where the gravel needs more packing. You and Maud kneel to fill a shallow shift near the left edge. Hob and the boys bring smaller stone. Osric trims the ditch where water has gathered against a root. The master marks the places needing final levelling, and his voice, though still brisk, has lost a little of yesterday's iron. A second cart arrives after sunrise, this one carrying sacks of grain toward the mill. The driver pauses, hears the first carter's report, and crosses with less fear and more noise. The wheels rattle over the stones. One sack shifts. The driver curses the sack, the road, and the entire profession of milling, but the cart passes cleanly. Soon after, 2 pilgrims cross on foot, stepping carefully along the firmer middle, their badges dull in the morning light. One pauses to touch the roadside shrine from afar, murmuring a thanks that may be for the saint, the ditch, or the fact that his boots remain visible. By mid-morning, word has travelled back toward the town. A merchant on horseback appears, pretending not to be impressed. He rides over the new stretch twice, once going out, and once returning after remembering some urgent matter that seems suspiciously like testing the road again. He says it is still rough. The master says rough is not drowned. The merchant has no answer for that, which is a rare and delicate silence. The suspicious monk comes near noon, walking beside the abbey steward. They stand by the lower meadow and examine the ditch with solemn faces. The monk watches the water move cleanly along the cut and away from the road. The meadow edge is wet but not torn wide, and the place for the cow crossing has been marked with 2 stakes. He looks at Maud, then at the master, and says the arrangement may serve. It is not praise, but it is not complaint. In the language of land and saints. This may be a hymn. Maud only wipes her hands on her apron and asks whether the abbey has spare planks. The monk blinks, then says he will inquire. Hob whispers that miracles continue. At midday, you eat beside the road rather than the shrine, because no one wants to walk farther than necessary. Bread, cheese, a little onion, a cup of ale passed around. The dog receives a crust and accepts it with the dignity of a royal grant. A boy finds the bent pilgrim badge you tucked into the roadside post yesterday and leaves it there, polished a little cleaner by his sleeve. Some swear lost badges guide their owners back if set where travellers can see them. No one can quite agree whether metal remembers the pilgrim or the pilgrim remembers the road, but the tiny ship shines faintly in the weak sun. In the afternoon, you help spread the final layer of smaller gravel over the tested stretch. Mallets thud, rakes scrape, boots tamp. The road is still uneven, still new, still vulnerable to rain, frost, neglect, and every heavily loaded cart driven by a man in a hurry. Yet it has crossed a threshold. It has carried weight. It has answered. You stand aside as another cart rolls through, this one with empty barrels bound for the alehouse. The wheels pass smoothly enough that the driver barely slows. For a moment, irritation pricks you. Does he not see what this cost? The stone, the brush, the court, the night watch, the cracked hands. But then you realize that this is what good road work becomes. Unnoticed, trusted, used without gratitude because it no longer draws fear. The sun lowers toward the west, soft behind cloud. The repaired mile glows damp and grey, stretching between town and field, toward forest and abbey, toward markets, shrines, meadows, and places not yet reached. The master stands with his staff planted beside him, looking down the line of the road. Hobbes says no minstrel will sing of it. Maud says minstrels prefer battles because they do not have to rhyme drainage. You laugh quietly, tired enough for the sound to feel like warmth. As evening approaches, the first cart's tracks remain visible in the surface, pressed but not sunk. They look almost ceremonial now, 2 dark lines over the new gravel, proof that the road can bear the ordinary burdens of the world timber, grain, barrels, pilgrims, complaints, dogs, bells, rain, and tomorrow's feet. You touch one aching hand to the handle of your spade and look toward the lanterns beginning to kindle near the town gate. The day has given you no trumpet, no feast, no Lord's thanks, only the small triumph of a cart that rolled smoothly where yesterday it would have stalled. Yet in the quiet of your tired body, it feels like enough. The lanterns appear one by one along the finished mile, small amber points trembling in the dusk as if the road has grown its own low stars. A boy from the town sets the first near the gate, shielding the flame with both hands. A lay brother from the abbey brings another, hung from a hooked staff. The carter with the mended wheel places one beside the bend where the rut once split his rim, and Osric, with great seriousness, hangs the rusted horseshoe from the tool cart, ends upward, where it catches the lantern light like a thin dark moon. You walk slowly behind the master, not because there is much left to inspect, but because no one wants to leave too quickly. The day has cooled. The road, packed and crowned, lies firm beneath your boots. Gravel shifts faintly underfoot, but it does not suck, slide, or swallow. The ditches on either side carry thin ribbons of water toward the alder roots, whispering in the evening quiet. Where brushwood sleeps under stone, the surface holds. Where the old paving showed itself through mud, it now rests among newer work, old hands and living hands sharing one burden. The dog trots ahead, stopping now and then to sniff at wheel marks, lantern poles, and every place where someone has eaten bread in recent memory. Hobbes says the beast will soon demand wages. Maud says it already receives wages in crusts and undeserved admiration. The dog glances back with perfect confidence, as if both are merely confirming its status. The abbey meadow lies dim beyond the fence. 2 planks have been laid across the new ditch for the cows, as promised, and the abbey steward has walked over them 3 times with the air of a man testing a bridge into paradise. Some swear cattle refuse crossings that are unlucky. No one can quite agree whether cows sense ill fortune or simply dislike unstable carpentry, but these planks have been accepted by one brown cow, which may be the most honest judgment given all week. Near the roadside shrine, the candle is lit again. The faded saint, whether Foy, Leonard, Giles, or some rain-softened cousin of them all, watches the repaired road with its unclear little relic tucked beneath soot and horn. The bent pilgrim badge shaped like a ship still rests near the post, brighter now where many fingers have polished it in passing. You touch the shrine's cold stone lightly as you pass. Not a grand prayer, not even a proper request, only a small thanks for a day that has ended without the road taking back what you gave it. The suspicious monk stands near the shrine when you arrive. His hood is lowered, and the lantern beside him warms one side of his face. For once, he looks less like a keeper of secrets, and more like a tired man who has spent too much time protecting a meadow from mud, carts, and other people's necessities. He speaks quietly to the master. You do not catch every word, only enough the ditch holds, the meadow drains, pilgrims will pass more safely, and the abbey will send broth tomorrow if the crew works the forest stretch again. Hob, hearing broth, declares the monk a man of profound spiritual depth. The monk's mouth almost smiles, almost. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether he opposed the road out of greed, duty, caution, or simple fear that one more change would loosen the old order of fields and bells. Even now, it is hard to tell, but he nods to Maud, and she nods back. And sometimes peace is nothing more than two tired people agreeing not to make the mud worse. The master gathers the crew near the middle of the repaired mile. No speech follows. Speeches belong to halls, courts, and men who did not spend the day tamping gravel. He only looks down the road, then at each of you, and says the work will do. That is all. Yet the words settle warmly. The work will do. For road builders, that is praise enough to carry home in both hands. You stand in the cooling dusk and listen. From the town comes the soft clatter of shutters, the bark of a distant dog, the faint laughter of people near an alehouse. From the abbey comes the bell for evening prayer, slow and rounded, drifting across the fields like smoke made of sound. Between them lies the road, the thing you have helped shape from mud, brush, stone, rope, argument, and aching muscle. A final cart passes before full dark, empty now, wheels rolling easily over the finished stretch. The driver barely glances down. He only lifts one hand in thanks and continues toward the gate. You watch the cart go, and this time the lack of wonder does not sting. It feels right. A road is not made to be admired. It is made to vanish beneath use, to become the ordinary path by which bread reaches town. Pilgrims reach shrines, monks reach markets, and tired workers find their way to supper. The lanterns tremble in the wind. The dog presses close to your knee. Your hands ache inside your sleeves, but the ache is dull now, familiar, almost companionable. You remember the first cold straw before dawn, the muddy hollow, the quarry's ringing stone, the cracked wheel, the gatehouse rain, the smoky guest house, the monk's watchful eyes, the forest spring, the manor court, the night watch beneath stars, and the first cart rolling smooth through morning mist. All of it seems folded into the road beneath you. At last. The master turns toward the abbey lane, where warm broth and a roof wait. You follow with the others. The lanterns remain behind, marking the finished mile. Their light grows smaller as you walk, but the road stays firm beneath your boots. carrying you gently through the dark. And now the world begins to soften. The voices of the crew fall lower, then lower still, until they are only murmurs beneath the evening bell. The cold does not bite as sharply. The wool around your shoulders holds a pocket of warmth. Smoke rises from the Abbey kitchen in a slow blue thread, and beyond it, one candle glows in a high, narrow window, steady and small. You step through the gate and into the quiet yard. Straw rustles underfoot. Somewhere, an ox shifts in its stall. The dog circles once beside the guest-house door, then settles as if this has always been home. Inside, the hearth is low and red, the benches are emptying, and the rushes smell faintly of lavender under the deeper scents of smoke, bread, and damp wool. You sit close to the fire. A bowl is placed in your hands, warm enough to ease the stiffness from your fingers. You do not need to speak. You do not need to explain the road, or the stones, or the long day. The work is outside now, resting under lantern light and night mist, ready to carry whatever morning brings. The bell fades. The hall grows dim. Shadows gather softly in the rafters. Your breathing slows with the breathing of those around you, with the sleeping dog, with the settling fire, with the old stones cooling beneath the road. You're safe enough at night, warm enough, tired enough. The medieval world, with all its mud and bells and watchful saints, loosens its hold and drifts backward into darkness. Let the tools rest. Let the carts wait. Let the road lie quiet under the stars. And if your thoughts still wander, let them wander gently down that finished mile, past the shrine, past the meadow, past the ditches whispering in the dark, until even the lanterns blur, and the last thing you know is the soft, steady feeling of being carried home.